In this video, I'm going to talk about how I set up drones. Just as an example, here's a song that's just got a basic drone going. And then as we go to song 2, this drone is going to fade out and crossfade into song 2, which is in the key of A. And you'll notice the faders work, and then everything turns back up. All right, so that's really awesome. So first, let me just talk about how this works. Right here, I've got my 2 drone tracks. These are 2 audio tracks. And then here, I've got 2 MIDI tracks. This MIDI track is controlling this drone track, and this one, that track. On my fade out here, I've got MIDI control message 46 set up, and I've drawn an envelope to fade that fader out. So I've got this fader set to respond to control message 46. And then when it gets right here, right before bar 4, I'm sending a note that is C3. And so C3, this stop button for the drone is, this stop button is programmed to respond to C3. So when it gets here, it sends this a stop message. And then after that, so after the drone stops at bar 4, it fades it back up so that it's ready and waiting for the next time we need to use a drone. So, and then over here I've got a fade in, same thing, just 46. It's sending a fade in message to this track. So we'll just watch that one more time. Here's drone 1. And then as I hit song number 2, watch this fade, and then you're going to watch this stop go trigger. Okay, that triggered, and then it turns it back up. Pretty cool. So that's how it's working. So now let me show you how to set it up. So we'll just go to a blank Ableton file, and I've got my 2 audio tracks. So first thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and add some MIDI tracks. So we'll add MIDI track here, insert MIDI track, which you can also do with Command-Shift-T. I'll move this over here, and then quickly we'll just name these drone 1. I'm going to hit tab, MIDI control 1, drone 2, MIDI control 2. Okay, so that's set up. Now I need to tell this MIDI controller to talk to this track here. So to do that, let me turn on my in-out stuff here. I'm going to use the built-in IAC driver. And you find this by going to your applications folder. I'm just going to use a shortcut here. But you'll go to your applications folder, and then there's a utility folder in there, and then you'll find your audio MIDI setup application. You'll want to go to the window here and pull up MIDI Studio. So show MIDI Studio, and then your IAC driver, double click on that. By default, it's going to be turned off. You turn the device on, and then here you can set up multiple buses for your IAC driver. Okay, once that is set up, we'll go back to Ableton and we'll tell Ableton how to respond to that. So first I'm going to go to my MIDI preferences, so Command comma, or up here, go to preferences, and then right here I use bus 2. You can use any bus you want to on the IAC driver, but I use bus 2. And then for the bus you're using, for the input, you want remote turned on. You don't need this other stuff turned on. For output, you need the track turned on and everything else turned off. So that's your MIDI setup. And then here, I'm going to tell it to output to IAC bus 2, and then channel 1 for this one. And then here, IAC bus 2 and MIDI channel 2. And that's that. All right. And then we'll create, well, first of all, let's go ahead and bring in a drone. So I'm going to go to my loop file here. In the browser, you can also just drag this in straight from the Finder, however you want to do that. So I'll bring in DreamyPad in G, and we'll just use that for now. And then here, I'm going to set up my MIDI envelope. So just double clicking in a MIDI track, let me create a few more scenes here. Create scenes, insert scene, Command I. So create a few more scenes. Double clicking in a blank slot will just create an empty MIDI track. That does not work for audio, but it does for MIDI. And so created that, and then here I'll go to envelopes. I need MIDI controls, and I use Control 46. It really doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want to. And we're doing a fade out, so I'll create a fade out here. I need this to be about 4 bars long, so I'm going to change my length right here, and I'm going to turn off loop because I do not want these MIDI messages looping. Otherwise it's going to just continually turn up and turn down every bar. That would be bad. Draw this out to about 4 bars long, and then I will have it turn up after it gets the stop command. And then to create my stop command here, down here in the clip view, you can highlight notes or envelopes. So you got these two features. And then I'll go to C3, double click and create a C3 right before bar 4. And so once it gets this trigger on the next trigger point, which will be right at the bar, it will send a stop command to that. So that's pretty much that. And now I've got my fade out set up. So I'll just rename this fade out. And now I need to program Ableton to respond to these messages. So just to help myself out here, I'm going to take this and I'm sorry, let me do this again. I'm going to create just an empty blank deal, and I'll create some MIDI 46, Control 46 messages here, and then I'll create another one, and this will be just to learn the stop command. So I'll create a C3 note right here. Okay, and I'll use this to teach Ableton. Now I'm going to go to MIDI learn mode. That is up over here. You can click on that, or Command M does the same thing, and that takes us to MIDI learn mode. Let me pull this down. The other trick here is you can open up your browser, and when you're in MIDI learn mode, it's going to show you what your current MIDI mappings are. Right now, I don't have any. Okay, there's one more thing I need to show you before we can do this. When I hit play on this guy, this is the envelope, I can hit my space bar to stop Ableton's clock. And then every time I start it again, it's going to re-trigger this clip. That's important because once I get in MIDI learn mode, I can't trigger clips. I can't tell it to start playing a clip. And even if I did, it would start playing Control 46 and it would assign this slot to respond to 46, and I don't want that. So I'll go into MIDI learn mode, I'll highlight my fader right here, and then I'll just hit my space bar and it's going to trigger, it's going to start this clip again. And when I do, you'll notice it learns 46. And when I open up my browser, I can see here it has learned 46. I'm going to change the max to 0 dB. If I don't, every time it runs that envelope, it's going to pop all the way up to +6. So that's important. Now I need it to learn the note. So let me go out of MIDI learn mode, play this guy, and now every time I hit spacebar, it'll play that. I'll go back to MIDI learn mode, and I'll highlight my stop button, hit play with spacebar, and it's learned C3 to stop the clip. So that's great. Now I need to do this again for drone 2. So I'll just drag these two guys over, and now it's going to be outputting on channel 2, so it's going to learn it separately. So I'll go back to MIDI learn mode. I've currently got my stop button, my C3 playing. So I'll go back to MIDI learn mode. I'll highlight the stop button, hit play with spacebar, and now it's learned to stop drone 2 with C3 on MIDI channel 2. And then I'll do the same thing with the envelope. Go back to MIDI learn mode, highlight the fader, hit spacebar, and now it is learned on channel 2 to control drone 2. And I'll make that 0. And now we are set up. So I'm done teaching it stuff, so I can just delete that. And now when I play this, you'll see it's fading out slowly on the drone right there. So that's great. I don't need a fade out though. The deal is if all I have is a fade out, notice I stopped Ableton and the fader stayed right there. So if I go to trigger this guy again, well, it jumped up. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes Ableton leaves the fader down. I'm not sure why it just jumped up right there. But nonetheless, sometimes that doesn't work and the fader stays down. So, oh, I think I know. If I do a stop, like if all this stuff gets stopped and then I trigger this thing, yeah. So now it left the fader down, and that's going to be a problem. So I create just some basic fade in envelopes. Let me just start over. Just create a new MIDI deal, go to envelope, and I'll just have it fade in a little bit. That's a real quick fade in. All my drones slowly fade in naturally in the audio file, so really the only purpose here is to pull this fader up so that when I play it, the fader jumps up and we're good to go. So I'll call that fade in, and then I'll have my fade out right here. And then let's create song 2. So I just option, click and drag to duplicate. And on this pad, I'm going to pitch it up to A. And we'll have song 2 in A. And then right here, I've got stop commands in these slots. So whenever I trigger song 2 here, so song 1 in G, whenever I trigger this guy, it's just going to stop the pad. I don't want that, so I can remove the stop button by right-clicking or Command E. And now, oh, and I need a fade in right here. So now when I hit song 2, it's going to crossfade for me. Okay, notice it's doing some funky stuff, and that's because loop is on. I obviously missed that. I think loop was on this one as well. Yeah, so you want to make sure loop is not on these guys because that makes it funky. All right, we'll try that one more time. There we go. And then also at this tempo, that fade out was way too slow. So for that tempo, maybe something like this is more appropriate. Cool. And then you'll see it'll get the stop command, and then it'll turn itself back up. Awesome. And that's how that works. So that's pretty cool. Depending on the tempo, you adjust your envelopes, but once you have it set, it's great. So this seems like a lot to set up. It is a lot to program here initially, and that's why it's important to have let me save this guy somewhere. Well, I think it just saved. Okay. Anyway, that's why it's important to have a basic template. And so I'll let you look at my template here. I've already got drones set up in a folder and a bus track there. And I've already got some out messages and some in messages. So if I want to bring in my dreamy drone here, let me drag that over. I've already got in messages here, and then I can just drag this guy around and say this next song's in A, whatever. I can bring in multiple audio files, and then just using my option, click and drag, I can drag that in right there, and then if I need to get this guy out, I can option, click and drag here, put that there, Command E to get rid of my stop button, and I think we're going to be ready to go. So here,
intro 2, 3.
Got my, oh, it stopped because I had a stop command right there, and it's using the follow plugin. Anyway, let me do that one more time. So now I've got that going, and then here comes my crossfade. And I might need to adjust this a little bit. It's MIDI 46. And I can adjust that however I need to and get this stuff working. The other thing I do is I always keep a blank scene down here at the bottom where I've got a couple of out commands, and then I'll use a keyboard keyboard command to F for fade. I'll also have MIDI commands assigned to it, And that way, at any point in any song, if I've got a drone going, it's never good to just stop a drone. That's never good in a service. So I've always got some fade options available down here in a scene that I'm not really using. And I can just hit F, and then it just fades out both drones. And so that's a great thing to put into your template as well and to have available. So once you've got it into your template, you can see it's really easy to start flying in drones and fading them in, fading them out, and it works. So I hope this video is helpful. And let me know if you have any questions.